For decades, audiences believed they were watching one of the most powerful performances ever captured on film. Critics praised its bravery. Scholars admired its realism. Viewers left theaters shaken and impressed. Yet behind that unforgettable portrayal stood Vivien Leigh, carrying struggles that were far more personal than anyone in the audience realized. What looked like carefully crafted intensity was, at times, intertwined with genuine emotional strain. This is not a story meant to diminish her talent. On the contrary, it is an attempt to understand the human being behind the legend. When we revisit classic cinema, we often celebrate the brilliance we see on screen without considering what it may have cost the performers. In Leigh's case, the line between art and personal vulnerability sometimes grew thin. The performance was extraordinary, but so was the emotional weight she bore. To appreciate her legacy fully, it helps to look beyond applause and awards and consider the environment, expectations, and personal battles that shaped her work during one of Hollywood's most demanding eras. When Leigh stepped onto the set of A Streetcar Named Desire, she was already an established star with an Academy Award behind her name. The world still associated her with the fiery strength of Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. That earlier success had elevated her to international fame, but fame can intensify private pressures. By the late 1940s, Leigh had experienced periods of emotional exhaustion and physical illness that were not widely understood at the time. Mental health awareness was limited, and conversations about mood disorders were rare in the public sphere. To colleagues, she appeared disciplined and elegant, determined to maintain her professional standards. Privately, however, she was navigating intense mood fluctuations and recurring health concerns. Accepting the role of Blanche Du Bois meant immersing herself in a character defined by fragility and psychological decline. It was a demanding choice, especially for someone already feeling stretched emotionally. Yet Leigh approached it with the seriousness and dedication that had defined her career from the beginning. The character of Blanche Du Bois, originally created by Tennessee Williams, required extraordinary emotional depth. Blanche is layered, defensive, vulnerable, and often on the brink of collapse. On paper, her breakdowns were scripted moments designed to reveal her inner turmoil. For a performer, portraying such complexity involves research, empathy, and technique. Leigh had already played Blanche on stage in London, earning critical acclaim for her commitment to the role. When the story transitioned from stage to screen under director Elia Kazan, the emotional demands shifted. Film acting is intimate. The camera captures every tremor and fleeting expression. Kazan was known for encouraging actors to draw from personal experience to achieve authenticity. Leigh, already deeply familiar with Blanche's world, brought a performance that felt startlingly real. Observers later reflected that her portrayal carried a rawness that was difficult to ignore. At the time, however, few paused to ask whether such intensity might also reflect personal vulnerability rather than purely technical mastery. During production, cast and crew noticed that Leigh sometimes appeared fatigued and emotionally drained between takes. Long filming schedules were common in that era, and expectations were high for major studio projects. Actors were often encouraged to push through discomfort in pursuit of excellence. Leigh remained committed to delivering what the role required, even when scenes demanded repeated emotional breakdowns. In interviews years later, colleagues described her as professional but sensitive, capable of luminous charm one moment and deep introspection the next. Today, with greater understanding of bipolar disorder, historians have revisited accounts of her mood shifts with more context. At the time, such fluctuations were frequently labeled as temperament or artistic sensitivity. The culture of filmmaking rarely paused for mental health considerations. If an actor could perform when the camera rolled, that was considered enough. Leigh met those expectations, but the effort required to do so may have been far greater than most realized. Success had never come easily, even after international recognition. Following Gone with the Wind, Leigh became one of the most recognizable faces in cinema. Public adoration can create a powerful illusion of stability. Audiences assume that someone capable of embodying strength on screen must possess it effortlessly in life. In reality, fame often magnifies insecurity. Leigh reportedly worried intensely about criticism, sometimes focusing more on a single negative remark than on pages of praise. Each new role felt like a test of whether she could live up to the towering expectations attached to her name. This pressure intersected with personal challenges, including physical illnesses such as tuberculosis and emotional strain within her marriage. Rather than retreat, she worked harder. The discipline that had once been her shield became heavier as expectations grew. Her drive to prove herself remained unwavering, even as her health fluctuated behind the scenes. Her marriage to Laurence Olivier was one of the most celebrated partnerships in theater history. Together, they were seen as a golden couple of the stage and screen. Their shared passion for acting created moments of extraordinary artistic collaboration. Yet both careers were demanding, and long separations, professional rivalry, and personal health struggles introduced strain. Olivier later acknowledged that loving someone with unpredictable health challenges could be overwhelming, particularly in an era when medical understanding was limited. Leigh valued his respect and reassurance, but as her mood swings intensified, stability became harder to maintain. The pressures of constant public scrutiny did not help. Their relationship unfolded under the watchful eye of fans and journalists eager for glamour, not complexity. While their bond included deep affection, it also reflected the challenges of two ambitious artists navigating fame, expectation, and private vulnerability in a time that offered few supportive resources. Returning to Blanche for the film adaptation required Leigh to revisit emotional territory she had already explored extensively on stage. Theater performances are intense but fleeting. Each night ends and begins again. Film, by contrast, preserves each moment permanently. Scenes can be repeated numerous times, requiring actors to recreate emotional peaks again and again. For someone already feeling depleted, this repetition can be taxing. Kazan's directing style emphasized emotional truth, sometimes encouraging actors to draw from personal memories. Leigh delivered scenes that felt heartbreakingly authentic. Modern viewers often describe her performance as almost documentary in its realism. Yet authenticity in art does not always mean safety for the artist. While there is no simple equation between her health and her acting, it is fair to acknowledge that embodying a character in prolonged psychological distress may have intensified existing pressures. Leigh's commitment was unquestionable. What remains open for reflection is how much support she received while carrying that commitment. One widely discussed moment during production involved a scene in which Blanche reacts to a shattered mirror. Leigh was known to be superstitious, and the symbolism of breaking glass reportedly unsettled her. Whether driven by personal belief or emotional association, the moment required careful handling. Ultimately, filmmaking techniques ensured the scene was completed safely. What stands out is not superstition itself, but the reminder that actors bring personal histories and sensitivities into their work. In modern productions, conversations about mental readiness and comfort are more common. In the early 1950s, such discussions were rare. The priority was completing the film on schedule and meeting artistic goals. Leigh fulfilled her responsibilities, yet accounts suggest that the emotional weight lingered beyond the set. When filming concluded, the character did not simply vanish from her inner world. Many actors speak of difficulty, letting go of intense roles. For Leigh, whose emotional landscape already contained extremes, that separation may have been particularly challenging. When A Streetcar Named Desire premiered, critical response was immediate and powerful. Reviewers described the film as groundbreaking, and Leigh's portrayal as fearless. She went on to win her second Academy Award, solidifying her status as one of the leading actresses of her generation. Publicly, it appeared to be a triumphant chapter. Awards ceremonies celebrated her achievement, and industry recognition reaffirmed her place in cinematic history. Yet professional success does not automatically resolve private struggles. In fact, acclaim can intensify pressure to replicate the same emotional heights repeatedly. Leigh now carried the expectation that she would continue delivering performances of similar intensity. The industry admired her capacity for emotional exposure without necessarily recognizing the personal toll. To audiences, she embodied artistic brilliance. To those close to her, periods of confusion, exhaustion, and mood instability continued to surface. The contrast between public triumph and private vulnerability became a defining feature of her later years. As the 1950s progressed, Leigh experienced hospitalizations and treatments that reflected the medical practices of the time. Electroconvulsive therapy was considered a legitimate intervention for severe mood disorders, though it could be disorienting and physically taxing. Records and personal accounts indicate that she endured such treatments more than once. Recovery was often framed in practical terms. If she could work again, she was considered stable enough. Long-term mental health planning was not a widespread concept in the entertainment industry. Leigh returned to stage productions whenever possible, finding purpose in performance. Theater remained a space where she felt connected and valued. However, episodes of memory lapses and emotional disorientation reportedly became more frequent. Colleagues sometimes covered for her on stage, improvising when she lost her place. These moments were handled discreetly, preserving her dignity in public. The show continued, as it always had, reinforcing the idea that perseverance alone was the answer to complex health challenges. The end of her marriage to Laurence Olivier marked another emotional turning point. Years of shared history gave way to separation, influenced by accumulated strain and diverging paths. For Leigh, the loss was both personal and symbolic. Their partnership had represented artistic unity and emotional refuge. Without it, she faced an increasingly uncertain landscape, yet she did not withdraw from her craft. Instead, she continued seeking roles that challenged her. Acting provided structure, a script to follow when inner life felt unpredictable. Friends described her as courageous, even when visibly fragile. It is important to avoid simplifying her life into tragedy alone. Leigh experienced joy, humor, and professional satisfaction as well. Still, the balance between resilience and vulnerability grew more delicate over time. The industry admired her dedication, but sustained support systems were limited. She navigated a world that applauded visible strength, while often overlooking invisible struggle. In 1965, Leigh appeared in Ship of Fools, a role that carried poignant parallels to her own journey. She portrayed a woman confronting aging and fatting illusions, themes that resonated deeply. Despite ongoing health issues, her performance received praise for its nuance and sensitivity. Co-stars later spoke of treating her with particular kindness, aware that she was physically weakened. Tuberculosis had resurfaced, compounding years of strain. Even so, she approached the project with professionalism. Observers noted that when the camera rolled, her focus sharpened. Acting remained the place where she could channel emotion into structure. The film stands today as a testament to her enduring skill. It also reminds viewers that artists often continue creating through personal adversity. Leigh's ability to deliver layered performances despite declining health reflects both her extraordinary discipline and the complicated expectations placed upon performers of her era. In her final years, Leigh spoke about returning to the stage again. Scripts rested nearby, symbols of hope and continuity. She believed that working offered stability, a way to anchor herself against emotional turbulence. This determination reveals much about her identity. Acting was not merely a career, it was a lifeline. Unfortunately, physical illness increasingly limited her strength. In 1967, she passed away at the age of 53. Tributes poured in from across the theatrical community. Theaters dimmed their lights in her honor, acknowledging a career that had shaped modern performance. Retrospectives highlighted her beauty, precision, and emotional power. Only gradually did broader conversations emerge about the mental health challenges she faced. With contemporary awareness, historians and audiences alike have revisited her life with greater empathy. Her story now contributes to ongoing dialogue about how creative industries can better protect those whose work requires emotional exposure. Looking back, it is essential to separate myth from humanity. Vivien Leigh was not defined solely by illness, nor solely by triumph. She was a complex individual navigating fame, expectation, love, and vulnerability in an era with limited psychological understanding. Her performances in Gone with the Wind and A Streetcar Named Desire remain landmarks of cinematic history. They endure because of her skill, preparation, and emotional intelligence. At the same time, modern viewers can acknowledge that great art sometimes emerges alongside personal struggle. Recognizing that reality does not diminish the work, it deepens appreciation for the resilience involved. As conversations about mental health continue to evolve, Leigh's life serves as both inspiration and caution. She reminds us that brilliance and vulnerability can coexist, and that supporting artists behind the scenes is just as important as celebrating them on screen.